welcome back to my channel. Now it's time for Spider-Man 2. This movie came out 2 years later, in 2004, June 30th of 2004. Now, with the huge success of the first movie, Sam Raimi was given a bigger budget. They bumped the budget up to $200 million, which back in 2004 was a ton of money. Nowadays, it seems like they're throwing $200 million at any tentpole movie. But back then, that was a huge gamble, even though the first one was widely successful. Now, this movie made $375 million in the U.S. and ended up doing $788 worldwide, which was a lot of money. A little bit less than the first one, although this one is generally considered the better movie and the best one in the Sam Raimi trilogy. Now, everybody came back. Tobey Maguire was back, obviously. Although that was in question. He had hurt his back, a severe back injury, and Jake Gyllenhaal almost came in to be Spider-Man in this movie. But Tobey Maguire got through his injury and came back just in time for filming to commence. Now, as we know, Norman Osborn was killed in the first one, so they needed a new villain. Harry wasn't ready to take up the mantle of the Green Goblin yet, and they brought in the great Alfred Molina as Dr. Octavius, or Doc Ock. Kristen Dunst was back, James Franco was back, Rosemary Harris was back, J. Jonah Jameson, or the great J.K. Simmons was back as J. Jonah Jameson. And they added some characters, but, you know, and even Bruce Campbell is back. Of course, Bruce Campbell's in almost every Sam Raimi movie. This one he plays an usher at the theater where Kristen Dunst's character, Mary Jane Watson, is in a play, and he's the usher that prevents Peter Parker from getting in to see the play because he's late. And Bruce Campbell's great in that small role. Hopefully he gets a role in Doctor Strange too, if Sam Raimi takes the job. But anyway, Harry Osborn in this movie is still reeling from his father's death and has the realization that Spider-Man is the one who killed him, or that's what he thinks, even though it's not the case. He still remains friends with Peter, but there's a little animosity there because Peter's the one who takes Spider-Man's pictures, and Harry thinks Peter knows Spider-Man personally, and that he could really tell him where Spider-Man is because he wants Spider-Man to pay. But Harry's taken over Oscorp. He's basically in charge now. He's basically doing what his father was doing. And they have this new project led by Dr. Octavius. And it's to create this new energy source, self-sustaining energy. And he's bankrolling it. And Peter wants to go and do an interview with him. So Harry arranges it. And Peter gets invited to the first test of this new energy source, and things go awry. And when Dr. Octavius, before he starts the test, he has this exoskeleton thing that goes on his back with his tentacles that can stand up to the power, the energy source, and not get destroyed. And he controls them through a chip inhibitor that goes into his spine. And when things go awry, he gets blown back, and the chip gets destroyed, and he gets knocked out. And the whole thing gets shut down. And Harry's upset because he thinks the company's over. And Dr. Octavius gets taken to the hospital, which the scene in the emergency room is straight out of The Evil Dead. The camera work, everything, it's great. I'm watching it again this morning with my son. God, that scene's expertly staged, pure Sam Raimi. I loved it, and it's been a while since I've seen it. Obviously, that's why I'm gushing about it all over again. Just fantastic stuff, and it's right out of The Evil Dead, just minus the gore. That's pretty much it, or the demons. No Necronomicons anywhere in sight. And we got our Doc Ock, although Dr. Octavius, it's not as simple as that. He doesn't want to be bad, but the tentacles basically take over his personality, and he becomes bad. Although as the movie goes towards the end, he has a realization that he doesn't want to be bad, and he doesn't want to destroy the city or kill anybody. But for now, he's the bad guy. And Peter's still doing the Spider-Man thing, but now it's consuming even more of his time. He's late to class in college. He's late to work. And he's become very unreliable because he's stopping crime, and nobody knows he's Spider-Man. And the breaking point for Peter is, because he kind of has a Superman 2 moment where he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore. But the breaking point of that is Mary Jane invites him to come to her play that she's starring in. And he knows what time he's supposed to be there. And he's late getting there because he's helping the cops stop a crime. And he gets there late. The play's already started. And this is where he meets Bruce Campbell's new character in this movie. He plays an usher, and he won't let him in because nobody's allowed in once the play starts. And Mary Jane gets really mad at Peter, and she's engaged to J. Jonah Jameson's son to get married, but she still has feelings for Peter, but he keeps letting her down. So that's the real catalyst, and that's where he basically makes his decision where I'm not going to be Spider-Man anymore. I don't want to be Spider-Man. And around this time, he's starting to have like doubts about it, and his powers are starting to go away, and he needs glasses again, and he loses his strength, and he just becomes Peter Parker, what he was before. Very smart, very, he's a geek again, and he thinks this is what he wants. This is how he can have Mary Jane and his life the way it should be. And through time, he realizes that, and through talking to his aunt, and he actually confesses to his Aunt May about what happened the night Uncle Ben got killed. And she's a little angry, but she tells him it's okay. She appreciates that he told her the truth, but it wasn't his fault. There's no telling what that guy could have done. Or if he would have shot Uncle Ben. You don't know what would have happened, so you can't blame yourself. But she gives Peter about the speech about, kids look up to Spider-Man, and we miss him, and he's needed. Crime's up all over the city. And even J. Jonah Jameson, even though he likes to smear Spider-Man in the press, misses Spider-Man because crime's up, and he realizes the city needs Spider-Man. And Peter comes to the realization that he needs Spider-Man. Doc Ock's running amok, and he has to stop him, and he's the only one who can do it. And he decides to come back and be Spider-Man. And this is where we get him and Mary Jane meet at this cafe after he professed his love for her, and he tells her that they can't be together. And this is when Doc Ock strikes. And this is where we get probably one of the greatest action sequences in a comic book film, the train sequence. It's fantastically staged. The camera works great, and it's just really good stuff. It's very exciting stuff. And of course, Mary Jane ends up being involved in the finale because Doc Ock realizes that Peter Parker likes this girl, and he takes her for bait. And Peter shows up at the end where Doc Ock set up his new lab, and they battle it out. And that's when Doc Ock realizes after Peter beats him that he doesn't want to be bad, and the only way to stop the machine from destroying the city is to bury it in a river. And he basically sacrifices himself to save everybody. But this is also where Mary Jane sees Peter, or Spider-Man without his mask on, realizes Peter is Spider-Man. And she even says, I had a feeling you were Spider-Man. But I wasn't sure, but I kind of had a feeling. But he tells her, look, we can't be together because I'm always going to have enemies, and you're going to be collateral. They're going to come after you to get to me. And she goes on to get married, and she ends up not getting married. She leaves the wedding and goes to Peter's apartment and says, I love you, and we'll just deal with it. And that's pretty much the movie, really. And Spider-Man 2 is one of the best comic book movies of all time. I don't think, in my mind, it's not my favorite, but it's one of the best, no hands down. And Sam Raimi really knocked it out of the park with directing this film. The action is exciting. It's very well staged. Sam Raimi gets to cut loose with his camera movements in this movie, and you could tell he brings a lot of his style that he's honed over the years, even more so than the first movie. You could tell he has a lot of leeway with the studio. He is allowed to go nuts. And it's a very, very well done comic book movie. And I would give this one a 9.5 out of 10. I really like this one. My son loved it. Yeah, it's definitely an awesome movie. And watching this one, like I said in the previous review for the first Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2 is better than the last two movies. I like the last two movies, Homecoming and Far From Home, but Spider-Man 2 is better. It's just a better made film. Action scenes are better. Like I said, it's not that I don't like Tom Holland. I do, and I like those movies, but just watching these movies again, realize how good these movies were. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. My son liked it, and that's all I got to say about Spider-Man 2. Thanks for stopping by and checking this out. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. Subscribe, join me here, check me out. I try to get a bunch of reviews up a week if I can. I just watched a bunch of movies this week, and my son's been sick, so we've been kind of sitting around watching movies. I watched The Nice Guys last night with my wife, which I watched in a while. I love that movie. I think I'm going to do a review for that. And a movie called Alligator, a cheesy creature feature or nature run amok movie from 1980. I think I'm going to do a review on that too. But have a great day, and I'll be back soon. Thanks.